Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sarah and you're watching Aurora Ketovore. As a beginner, I'd like to just remind everyone that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a health professional in any way. We're just documenting my journey for my health, for me, and if I can help someone along the way, that would be a huge bonus. So let's get started here. Today's video is called Can Eating Fat on Your Plate Burn the Fat on Your Butt? Basically, maybe. Or can eating the fat on your plate burn the fat on your belly? And you might be surprised at how that actually works. So let's talk about the thumbnail. The thumbnail is a picture of me, side-by-side photos. On the left-hand side is from back in 2020. That was just when the pandemic basically started, and we had we'd gone off to a lake to get away with some friends, and that picture was taken, and it was rather shocking. At that point, I was trying so hard. I had been doing keto for several years at that point, and I had lost quite a bit of weight. However, by that time, I had kind of yo-yoed quite a bit of it back, not all of it at that point, but enough. At that point, I couldn't understand where I was supposed to go next, right? So I would eat keto, and everything would be great, and I love it. I love the food. It tastes good. You just can't have a donut. When little things like COVID came along and got thrust in your face, and it's stress and anxiety ridden, you do what I did, and you go, nah, Monday's another day. Maybe next week. I'll get back on it next week. So the pictures on the right were actually from about 2 weeks ago. I was going through some of my old photos on my phone, and I came across that photo, and I'm like, what? And I knew what got to me at that point, this was like 2 weeks ago, was I remember that day. I remember how hard my husband and I, we were eating keto on that camping trip, and we didn't cook with our friends because we were eating differently from them. And I mean, mind you, it's always a journey. You're always working on it. But even still, I just didn't realize that it was even to that degree, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And then as the years just continued on from there, it was the same old. I would do keto, fall off, not do keto. Gain weight, kick myself. I would be so upset and so disappointed in myself, basically, for not having the willpower or why was my why not big enough for me to keep it going, right? Because that's what I tell everybody. It's like, well, I don't want to have the diseases that plague my family, right? So anyway, I found keto back in 2016, and this scale was steadily climbing at that point. It was hard. Like, I tried every diet that hit the Women's World. That was my magazine. Every week I'd buy another magazine, see what diet is coming around the pike that day, and sure enough, there's a good, that one's going to work for sure. And they would always come with recipes and meal plans, and it's just not how we eat. It's just not even. I'm working on a recipe book, because over time I have found some amazing recipes, but for me to build you a meal plan would be pointless, because I love olives. Maybe you hate olives. I don't mind avocado, but it's not something that I would typically buy, because it's not a favorite thing of mine, right? So why would I want to force myself to eat stuff that I don't particularly care for. It's not um, it's not helping me. It's not doing me any good. I need to learn how to eat around foods that I like, right? And especially coming from a Mennonite background, we have a specific palate that others may not, right? So yeah, I found out very quickly that I could not sustain on willpower. Okay, willpower is like a battery, and if by the end of the day your battery's dying, your willpower is shot. That's usually how evening snacking comes about, because your battery's done, and out comes the pint of ice cream or the bag of popcorn or chips or whatever, and so willpower is not sustainable. You need to have specific foods that you enjoy, and you need to have a good why. And that was one thing that I hadn't really nailed down. I have, in the back of your mind, like, well, you want to be healthy for your family. You want to be able to play with your grandkids, play with your kids, whatever it may be, right? But my why was, it was a jumble of so many things, right? So I was a very young 23-year-old when my mom went for quadruple bypass surgery. And when that happened, it changed the whole family's way of eating. So things like butter was out the door. We couldn't have cream. You couldn't have frying with lard. No. You get rid of all the animal fats, because now you're cooking with canola oil, because that's healthier. And so many things like that. And she followed things to a degree, but she was also the kind of, well, if I can't enjoy what I'm eating, then I might as well be dead, right? Which isn't wrong, because you do need to find pleasure in what you are allowed to eat, right? It's a matter of finding enough pleasure to be satisfied with those things, that you don't need all the unnecessary junk, right? My mid-30s, my brother was diagnosed with colorectal cancer, and it took a toll. I mean, by the time they got that out, it had moved into his liver, so they had to operate on that. Then it went into his lungs, and I mean, he's still alive, but his the quality. Where's the quality in your life, right? When I was 37 is when the heart disease finally took Mom's life, and so in the back of your mind, you've got all these things. It's like, I don't want to go that path. I don't want to be on that road. Watching her die was pretty rough. It was not something that you certainly want for yourself, right? So then it makes you think, what can I do to change the trajectory of my life? Because it's inherited to a degree, right? So about 10 years later, we lost Dad to lung disease that wrecked his heart, basically. And he was 87 years old. He'd had a good life, and the last few years he had really changed his health and lost a lot of weight, and so it was a much more peaceful passing, I guess you could say. And anyway, less than a year ago, my older sister was also diagnosed with colorectal cancer, and so she's fighting with that right now, and it's hard. It's really hard, and it's something that the rest of me and my siblings were all doing regular colonoscopies just to try to keep on top of it. But man, I'm telling you, it sure lights a fire under you when you've got that looming, basically, because it's very, very hereditary, right? I have 4 adult children. I don't have any grandkids yet, but hopefully one day. And I have an amazing husband, and I need to be the best me I can be. And if that means that I can't have a donut, that's fine, because there are other things that taste just as good, if maybe not better. Anyway, and then let's not even, diabetes. Most of my cousins my age are diabetic. And it's kind of freaky to think that I was well on my way. In fact, it got to the point where I just wasn't going to the doctor to have it tested because I may not have been diabetic, but I was definitely pre-diabetic. I had a lot of the symptoms, and a lot of the it was starting to be pretty glaring anyway. So anyway, actually, before I even found keto, I was introduced to a company of supplements called Plexus, and at that point, I was already searching for something. I had already tried many things. Nothing seemed to really be making not a significant difference. You know how it is when you try something. You'd like to see some results fairly quickly so that you have a place to start from, so that you can go, oh yeah, okay, this is working. So now if I try this and I keep working on it, then maybe that'll make the difference. And Plexus was that. It was actually pretty mind-boggling. I honestly believe it brought my daughter back from possible colitis. She was having a lot of stomach issues at the time, and we reversed that. So that was pretty cool. And my husband at that time, he was like, well, if it's good for you, isn't it good for me? So he kind of joined me on it, and to this day, it's a daily routine of ours. And there's okay, so we're doing Plexus. There's many wonderful companies out there. You can go to your local health food store and find some really good supplemental products. Plexus just happens to be what made the difference for us, and so that's why we kind of stick with it. It has been well worth our while. So I was probably mid-teens when I first got bronchitis. I was on a bike ride when it started to rain, and I got pelted. I got so wet and so cold, and I was sick within days, and I got extremely sick to the point where I ended up on antibiotics, and that's where my chronic bronchitis began. It's where I was on antibiotics probably 2 or 3 times a year just for that, right? And then within, I don't know, probably about 5-10 years after that, I was put on inhalers so that I could just to help with my breathing, because I definitely had lung issues, and which is something that is also hereditary. My dad had lung issues, and he used inhalers for many years, right? I had chronic yeast infections, chronic constipation, plantar fasciitis. Let me tell you what, oh, my feet. When you're afraid to get out of bed in the morning, because when your feet hit the ground, you know it's going to be pure pain for the first minute just getting out of bed. And it's hard to imagine that food and lack of supplements, a lack of something, can create such a pain in your foot, right? But let me tell you, it wasn't fun. A lot of joint pain, a lot of knee pain, especially in the knees. My siblings, we all tend to have knee issues, so isn't that fun? Chronic fatigue. I couldn't think straight. Always kind of like in a bit of a fog, where you just go through the motions, getting through your day, and then it's so tired that you nap in the afternoon. You're exhausted by bedtime. You can't wait to go to bed, but then you can't sleep properly. Like, what is up with that, right? And the immense binge cravings, like ice cream or them donuts, right? Kids' birthday come along, wow, let's have an ice cream cake, right? Or some apple pie. Oh, food. Anyway, I was very grateful that I actually found the supplements first, so that I could take care of that part. I'll make a video yet of all the different products that I do use from Plexus, because each one is significant in its own way, right? Like, The Bio Cleanse is the one that really jumps out at me, because that's basically what took care of the chronic constipation. That one blew my mind, because it made such a difference so quickly that it was huge. And because it's a magnesium supplement, right? I also had chronic yeast infections, like almost monthly. Plexus probiotic doesn't need to be refrigerated, because it has been freeze dried. So when it hits your stomach acids aren't killing off all the good probiotics before it even gets to its destination to begin its purpose. And so I don't think I've had yeast infection again since the day I started taking the Plexus, taking their probiotic. And honestly, I mean, I've used other probiotics in the past, and I've never, it's never done anything. So there's definitely something to that one, with it being freeze dried, and that it doesn't have to be in the fridge. It can just be sitting on the counter, and it's a wonderful product. Yeah. So I credit a lot of my healing and for giving me the strength to just look for more, to bring me up out of the fog enough to even want to strive for more, right? Like I was a very athletic teenager. I loved baseball. I loved running. I loved soccer. I just loved being outside and being active, and so being able to first, like I say, get my head out of the fog long enough to actually know or think that maybe there was something more out there. So it was actually less than a year after I started Plexus that I found keto. And so probably about 6 to 9 months that I was handling things strictly with supplementation before moving on to changing up my eating, right? And I had no idea. I mean, I'd been on Weight Watchers, been on all kinds of different protocols before, but like I said, nothing sustainable. I didn't know much about keto when I started. I just kind of like saw it, read it, saw some pretty good things about it, and I thought, oh, I'll give this a start, and then I'll just learn more as I go along, and that's kind of how I did it, and which was good. I mean, some people prefer to become an expert before they even try it, and for me, it's like I didn't have that time. I didn't have the luxury of time. I wanted to get on it, and so that's what I did. I didn't know. I just knew that I needed to eat a lot of fat. I needed to eat some protein, and I needed to reduce my carbs to as 20 grams of carbs or less is how I started out, right? But I just didn't know what that all encompassed, so for a while there I was following Dr. Berg, and he's eat 7 cups of salad a day kind of guy, and I'm like, I could do that for a few days. I don't mind salad, but I don't love salad. And it didn't take me long to know that some vegetables just ripped my insides to pieces, and that wasn't fun. When you're a real gassy lassie, yeah, nobody really wants to play with you. It's just, they just want to stay away from you. But I did it. I worked on it, and I dropped 30 pounds quickly, and I felt amazing. Everything felt great, but I just had hit this wall, and it's like, no, I'm not done yet. I need to lose at least another 40 pounds. Like, come on, let's go. But I didn't know. I didn't know where to go next, or what to implement, what to change, and I didn't understand the science behind it, and I certainly didn't know where to find it, right? And that's probably what the biggest problem was. So then I started following all kinds of different people, and like, okay, see, maybe I'm just doing keto wrong, because there's several different ways of doing it. So then I heard about high protein. Oh, okay, wow. Which is, I needed to see if it fit me, and it didn't. But I'm glad I did, because now I know. And that's what I advise for anybody. If you don't know, try it. It was kind of funny in a way, because even my husband, he just laughed at me. He's like, you're going to eat a high protein diet? He just couldn't get over it, because I was not a meat eater. To me, meat was the thing that made everything taste good, but it itself wasn't what I wanted to eat. Like, the meat makes the gravy that goes on to the potatoes to make the potatoes taste really good, and that was what I liked to eat, was the gravy on the potatoes. Meat sauce, if I was having spaghetti and meat sauce, I would literally scoop the tomato sauce kind of off of the meat, and I would put that on my spaghetti, because that's what I preferred. I love the tomatoey sauce. But you had to have the meat in there to make the sauce taste good, right? So it was kind of funny that, and yet, honestly, I've learned how to eat a lot more meat and actually enjoy it. I I'm not a steak eater. I'm really not big on beef personally. It's just a flavor, or just a taste preference. I think the only thing that I can really eat from beef would be hamburgers, and even that minimally. Honestly, if I had my way, I could live on chicken and fish, just because I really like it. That's what tastes good to me. And the beauty about eating keto is you can it reduces your need to eat. It's not, how should I put this? Being on a ketogenic diet, you lose this crazed need to be eating all the time, to be making the most palatable meals you can. I mean, you still want palatable meals, but it's not a driver, right? I can take a salmon, and I have 3 or 4 different ways that I enjoy eating it, and I can make that, and that's all I need to eat, and I'm good to go. I can eat a serving of creme brulee, and it is so ultimately satisfying that I don't need anything more after I've eaten it. Like, you're not so focused on your next meal or what, and you don't even understand that until you've experienced what it's like to not be so driven and so controlled, and it's like being hypnotized. That's what I would call it. Carb addiction is like hypnotic. You can't focus on anything else. It's just, it drives you, right? So after trying to be high protein for several months, and finally just, falling off of it all the time, because I just couldn't do it. Like, and when you're eating such a high protein, then you're actually supposed to bring your fats down, and fats are the things that make me happy. Like, that's what satiates me and makes me able to not think about eating all the time. So I would just keep falling off of it, because I just couldn't do it. And that first picture of me on the left there was right about that time when I was trying to eat high protein, and it was not working. And so yeah, long story shorter, last summer was when I found Dr. Boz and her protocol and her step-by-step program. And I can honestly tell you that at this moment, the way I feel right now, I have never felt this way before when it came to how I'm eating or how I'm feeling. Like, I love moving my body. I love I love going to bed early and I love getting up early. It's just been, it's like it's a brand new me, because this is not normal for me, for the old me anyway. So Dr. Boz's protocol is 20 grams of carbs, total carbs or less per day. And at this point, I have no problem doing that at all. I do a certain amount of net carbs, because I don't believe that allulose as a sweetener is a problem for me. I use my glucose meter, I use my ketone meter to test that out, and it isn't a problem for me. So I subtract those. I don't count them into my total carbs. Even still, to this day, I rarely get more than 10 grams of carbs per day, like total carbs. So when I get a little bit of sweetener in that way, I feel totally satisfied and satiated and happy. So I'm good with that. In her protocol, the amount of protein you're supposed to have is, it's 1 gram of protein, the protein that's in the meat, not the weight of the piece of meat, but the actual grams of macros in your meat is supposed to be, you're supposed to get 1 gram of protein per ideal kilogram of weight that you should be. Okay, so for myself, I would like to get down to about 130 pounds. Okay, so if you take the 130 pounds and you divide that by 2.2, that gives you kilograms. That means that my ideal weight in kilograms would be 59 kilograms. And so I should be having 1 gram of protein per ideal kilogram. So if my ideal kilogram is 59, my ideal amount of protein to eat per day would be 59 grams of protein macros in your meat, not the weight. It's two very different measurements, right? And then your fat grams should be fat to satiety. Personally, I'm getting at least double the amount of fat to protein. So I'm getting at least 120 grams of fat per day, sometimes closer to 200. And that it's just, actually, Dr. Boz will never tell you how much fat you should eat. She always says to eat fat to satiety. And then when it comes to, there's a lot of instances where say you hit a wall, or you're going along and everything's great, you're losing weight, and then all of a sudden you stop. Everything's, you're still feeling good, but you're just not losing weight. And a stall has to be more than 2 to 3 weeks before you can consider it a stall. Up until then, it's just, there's all kinds of chemistry that's happening in your body that you don't necessarily know what's happening, but it is happening, that you have to take that into account. You can't just go, oh, I didn't lose a pound this week, so I must be stalled. Sometimes you are, most times you probably aren't. And that's what happened in that picture, because I didn't realize that significant of a change had happened. And remember, that first picture was actually from 2020. So that was like two years before I even got started on Dr. Boz. Technically, I was probably already bigger than that. I just don't know that I have the pictures to prove it, but I'll have to take a look. I'll go take a look. So when asked, I've seen some of Dr. Boz's YouTube videos where she's specifically asked the question, how much fat should I have if I've hit a stall? Should I be dropping my fat grams? And she will say, if you've hit a stall with the amount of fat grams that you're having, say you're having 120 grams of fat a day and you've been losing weight, and that's all good. if you hit a stall, she would prefer you to change your eating window instead of changing your fat macros. And we'll get into that in here in just a minute, and I'll show you what I mean. So I wanted to first touch base on the Dr. Boz ratio. So it's your blood glucose divided by your blood ketone number. And Dr. Boz wants you to take those numbers first thing in the morning. Now, that being said, when you first start on keto, she doesn't even want you using blood measurements. Like, it's not, it's too, that's for advanced. That's for when you're farther along. And to begin with, what she would like you to do is just use a ketone pee stick that you just, and it'll tell you if you're in ketosis or not, and then that's how you build from there. She has a total step-by-step protocol that it works for, and it's way easier and a lot cheaper, right? So, but when you do get to the point where you're taking your blood measurements, and I've been doing that for years just because I like the science and I like the chemistry, I find it interesting. Anyway, so for instance, for myself, most mornings my glucose is in the 80s, which is a really good number. Like, it's a great place to be in. Ideally, if for fighting like an autoimmune disease or cancers or something, she would prefer your numbers would be in the 60s and 70s. Now, if you were to ask your mainstream medical, they would say that that's way too low. You're going too low, but it's not. And there's a lot of doctors out there that are proving it over and over and over, and it's becoming more widely known. And some are gonna believe it, and others are not going to believe it, and it's up to you how you want to do that, right? This is her protocol. So, for instance, if I get up, my glucose is in the 80s, and generally my ketones are over 1. So, for example, if say because this is my glucometer, and it's a Freestyle Precision Neo, and it does the numbers in, I don't even know what the difference is called. When I take my blood ketones with this, it'll shoot out a number like 4.6 or 4.8, or actually when I started I was over 5, so I was definitely in the 90s, getting closer to 100, and you definitely want to be under 100, especially if you're healthy. A healthy number is under 100. Anyway, so say it was 4.6, you times that by 18 to get to that higher number, which 4.6 equals 82.8. Okay, so you would take that 82.8 and you would divide that by your ketones. So say my ketones are 1.2, that would be 82.8 divided by 1.2 would give me a Dr. Boz ratio of 69, which is not a bad number at all. So if you were to go according to her chart, anything under 100 of her ratio is probable fat burn. Okay. Now, if you can get it under 80, then you're definitely in a fat burning area, and you probably have a chance of autophagy. Autophagy is something that we'll go over in a later video, but it's pretty amazing stuff. So that's between 40 and 80. Anything under 80 is definite fat burning, definitely autophagy, a certain degree of autophagy, and but it's also autoimmune disease area, like where you would be fighting off autoimmune disease, whether that be like Hashimoto's or anything like that, diabetes, high blood pressure. Those are all autoimmune issues, right? And then there is less than 20, and that's where she pushed her mom to be, because that's cancer fighting. It's serious autophagy, and it's cancer fighting, and to get there is it's a really tough place to be in, and it probably takes a lot of fasting actually in order to get your numbers that low routinely, and it's pretty serious. So not everyone needs the science. Not everyone even wants it. My daughter, for instance, um, she uses a breath ketone meter, and she's happy with that. She does not like the sight of her own blood. It makes her want to pass out, and so for her to take her blood ketones and blood glucose is just really not an option for her. Her She's been doing keto for 6 months, and the difference that she has made doing it the way she's doing it, and she's still making great strides. And there's a lot of things she can tweak before she would ever have to take her blood measurements, right? So the ketone sticks are good for a while. They basically, what that measures is, so your body is building ketones, your liver is building ketones, your body is learning how to be fueled on ketones. But eventually, as your body gets better and better at using ketones for fuel instead of glucose, it starts to use up those ketones. So after a while, so when you start out, you have a degree of pink to dark burgundy of your ketone, and it kind of matches it up. There's kind of a protocol that follows to be similar to a blood ketone. But eventually, as you get better and better and better at it, your ketones start to drop, simply because you're not excreting ketones anymore, because your body's actually burning it for fuel. So that's what it's supposed to do. Breath ketones are very similar. So you use it while you can, and a lot of people don't even care. They just want to follow the protocol and do what they, do the tweaks that they need to do, and they're good to go. That's all that matters to them, right? She only really asks the blood measurements from people that have a chronic illness, that they're trying to bring themselves, they're changing things in order to get out of chronic illness, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So the interesting thing was, I had been doing great. So from about beginning of August till Christmas time, I was, steadily, my numbers were getting really good, and I was losing weight, and everything was just swimming. When Christmas time came around, I tend to be a bit of a Christmas freak, and so I had to make some changes, because there was no point in me baking all these goodies that I was mostly baking because I loved them. They were my traditions. Most of my family couldn't have cared less about a lot of it, right? So we had our first Christmas where the foods involved were keto friendly, and the ones that weren't, I didn't have a hard time at all just saying no to. It really wasn't a big deal. So, but for some reason, at about that time, my numbers really came to a screeching halt. I wasn't gaining weight, I wasn't losing weight. I was just kind of steady, holding the line there, which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Like you always have those seasons, right? But then it's trying to, when you do need to kick it into gear, what are you gonna do next, right? But I had learned to trust the process and know that there is chemistry going on inside me that obviously I can't see, and as long as I keep doing what I'm supposed to be doing, things will change when they're supposed to change, right? And so it was actually kind of funny, because all of a sudden one day my numbers changed. It was like on a Tuesday or something, and all of a sudden, instead of having a glucose in the 90s, I was having glucose in the 80s and sometimes in the 70s, and I'm like, okay. And at the same time, my ketones went up, and because I was always like 0.5 or 0.6, and really that's barely ketosis. That's, considering that I was eating as clean as I was, it was kind of confusing, but trust the process, right? So about the same time as I found that picture, I was going through because I keep a diary. I keep a log of my numbers every single morning, and very often I keep a log of what I'm eating. Just I use the app Chronometer on my cell phone, and it's a really good good app to keep track of your macros and it's easy to use. I think that's probably the sweetest part, is that it's so simple to use, and it kind of takes away all the thought process, right? Anyway, I was going back but I write everything down too, and I have a bit of a diary, and I'm going through it, and I seen this date where all of a sudden one day my glucose was really high and my ketones were down, and the next day it was opposite. It had switched. My glucose had come down and my ketones were up, and I'm like, okay, what happened on this day? Like, why now all of a sudden? And then it was consistently glucose down, ketones up. Okay, so something shifted, something changed. And I'm looking at my paper, and I'm like, right at the very top it said started metabolic prime. And so I'm assuming that there's a correlation between the two, that I started to work out and at the same time my numbers switched. So I'm actually in week 5 of doing metabolic prime, and it's a lot of weights. It's very little cardio. In fact, if every once in a while I'll get out a skipping rope and just jump rope, like just try to, ideally I should be doing like a minute a day at least, but I don't think about it half the time. So yeah, as the thumbnail says, can eating fat make you burn fat off your body? Obviously it can, because the pictures of me beside the old picture of me, the biggest difference is in the amount of fat that I eat. Will it always be like that? I don't know. That's the pathway that I'm on right now, and it seems to be working for me, so I'm just going to continue on. And obviously the difference in those pictures is less than 20 pounds. So when people say get rid of your bathroom scale, there's a reason for it, because it's not telling you the truth. The only reason I continue to use mine is because it motivates me. Like I said in my other video, it lights a fire underneath me and keeps me going. So if that works, that's good for me, right? So anyway, when it comes to Dr. Boz's protocol, I know I showed this in the last video. It's a guide, right? It's just from her book, The Keto Continuum, and it's guidelines and next steps when you run into your brick wall, right? So in number 1 here, it says, I eat every 2 to 4 hours. I test nothing. I'm fueled on glucose. I must refuel often, and I'm never fueled by ketones. So that's where most everybody starts out, right? You know there's a problem. You're trying to figure out what the problem is and what the solution is, right? So then step 2 is where she encourages you to eat less than 20 total carbs per day, not per meal, per day, and you eat every 6 to 8 hours. And so basically you're letting the chemistry carry you. So even for when my daughter was starting, I'm like, when you're hungry, you eat breakfast, preferably just breakfast, lunch, and supper. Snacking is never necessary. And then, but if you want to have maybe put some cream in your coffee. My daughter never did. She wasn't interested in having cream. She loves black coffee, and so we're like, okay, we'll just find other ways. So she did get into she does drink iced coffees, and that has cream in it. So that's where she puts a lot of her fats into her iced coffee. So she'll sometimes put MCT powder in there and that kind of thing. So you're eating you're eating less than 20 total carbs per day. This is where ketosis begins. Fat-based hormones rise. Eating happens less frequently. Be sure to eat high fat with low carbs. Your body uses the fat to restore your fat-built hormones, all right? So your hormones need fat in order to build up. Elevated insulin within your body prevents you from using your stored fat. So as long as your insulin is up there, insulin goes up every time you eat. Every time you eat, your glucose rises, and then your body secretes insulin to take care of that glucose, to make it go where it's supposed to go. But your body will not allow you to use the fat on your belly, on your butt, on your wherever when your insulin is up. So you have to have low insulin, and you must eat the fat to keep the insulin low. Everything you eat, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, carbs, protein, fat, when you eat anything, your glucose will rise, sometimes minimally, sometimes a whole lot, depending on what you're eating. But insulin is always present, and insulin is important. It is an important hormone, but you don't need to have it in high concentrations all the time, right? So that's what prevents you from burning fat off your body. When you get to step 3, so you're still in the beginner phase here. Beginner phase is all the way to step 4. Step 3 is when you accidentally miss a meal. Dr. Boz loves that. That's what she's waiting for, is for you to accidentally miss a meal. That means you're keto adapted, right? Chemistry is still carrying you. Fat supplies the resources needed to make fat-built hormones. So you need to take in the fat, right? Now, this is where it comes in. I'm very blessed that Derry and I are friends. You might not be, right? You may need to find other fat. Like some people, like I don't like steak. You might love steak. Steak has lots of dietary fat on there, all depending on the cut, right? Say you're eating a ribeye. Everybody loves their ribeye steak. That fat is friendly. That is what you need in order to help build these fat-based hormones, right? So when the fat-based hormones approach healthy levels, appetite decreases according to your body's chemistry. Sometimes it takes 10 weeks before this moment happens. Don't look at the scale. Listen for the absence of hunger. So you want to be able to go from one meal to the next, whether that be 1 meal a day or 3 meals a day, without snacking in between. Salt, water, black coffee, unsweetened tea. That's all you need to get you from one meal to the next, right? And then there's number 4, which is now you're eating 2 meals per day. So you're cutting out a meal, whether that be breakfast, supper. It depends. Everybody's different. I'm not a huge breakfast eater to begin with, so for me it was so easy to cut out breakfast. So then I just eat lunch and I eat supper and I'm done. Now, an interesting thing that I just recently, within the last couple of months, actually came across was someone asking her, well, how much fat should I eat? And she said, well, that's really not the important part. Right now, maybe what you need to do is just change your eating window. And she likes you to work according to your circadian rhythm, which has to do with sunrise and sunset and your body's response to it. So she would prefer you to actually maybe bring your meals into the day, not eat into the evening. So even for myself, I try very hard not to eat later than 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It doesn't always work, especially on weekends when the whole family is home and things are sometimes out of your control. But on a regular basis, on a more consistent basis, I just try to eat by 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then that means if I eat at 11 or if I eat at 1, I still only do my 2 meals, but the last one has to be done by 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And it seems to be making a difference, right? So when you're eating 2 meals a day, you're going to choose to eat only 2 meals per day. You have to succeed 7 days in a row before you advance into the next number, whatever. So after that, you're from steps 5 to steps 8. This is your baseline metabolism. So up until this point, you've just been working on getting into ketosis. You're getting your body adjusted to burning ketones for fuel, and you're starting to really feel it, right? You're having some success with weight loss, or maybe some symptoms are settling down. Like for me, I have, my joints are so painful, and then one day all of a sudden, like like my knuckles aren't hurting, my knees aren't tweaking every time I want to go up and down the stairs. My plantar fasciitis, which Plexus had taken care of a lot of that as well. But when I started gaining more weight because of my eating habits, the planters started to come back a little bit because of excessive weight on my feet, I would imagine. I have no idea really. And yet, as soon as I start to eat better, of course you're losing weight, but even when I wasn't losing weight, just eating better, my feet felt a lot better, like significantly. Like I don't have any feet pain, because there for a while I thought I had heel spurs, and I have no pain in my feet. So take that for what it is. Okay, so step 5, you're in your baseline metabolism. This is the area where you're going to live, right? That is you've gotten yourself into ketosis, and now you have a place where you're going to live. You're going to be tweaking it around to play with it to make it work for you, but that's going to be your area. So number 5 is starting to eat in a 16-8 window. So 16 being 16 hours of no food with 8 hours of an eating window, right? So if 8 hours would be like if you were having your first meal at 10 o'clock in the morning, and remember at this point you're still only eating 2 meals a day. So if you're having your first meal at 10 o'clock in the morning, your second meal could be at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, right? That's 8 hours from one to the next. You're going to eat all food, snacks, and supplements in this 8-hour window. So I guess basically there she's telling you can snack, but there's no eating, no snacking, and no chewing for 16 hours. And that means no gum on your fasting hours either. You're not supposed to chew. You can suck on salt if you need a substitute, and I do that. I do a lot of that actually. It just tastes awesome. And at this point, you can still keep your coffee filled with fat, whether that be out of at any point in that window, like in your day when you're drinking, you can still have cream in your coffee, or some people like to put eggs in their coffee, some put butter in their coffee, some do MCT powder. When I'm trying to get more fats in, if I'm not able to get it through the food that I'm eating, I'll very often put a scoop of unflavored MCT powder into my coffee, and it tastes really good. It doesn't alter the flavor at all. It actually just ups your fat. Step number 6 is an advanced 16-8. So you're going to clean up your morning drink, and that's where I have been now. This is where I'm at right now. I've cleaned up my morning drink, so now when I get up in the morning, it's black coffee. In fact, I'll put salt in my coffee just to cut the bitterness, which I'm actually starting to quite like now. You remove all your calories and sweeteners from your morning drink. So that's no fat, no MCT, no butter, no sweeteners, no calories. The 16 hours equals only salt, water, black coffee, or tea. Don't remove the fat from your morning drink before this phase. You need it to get here. Now it is time to let it go. I may have shed a few tears, which is so weird because before I found keto, I never had cream in my coffee. I always drank black coffee. But then you learn to like it. And I really did like it. So anyway, step 7, moving on, is 23-1, which is 1 meal a day. So all in 1 hour. All your food is in 1 hour. That is my next step. I know that it's coming. I'm just basically working towards it, and I'm hoping that it'll be an easy transition. At this point, by the time lunchtime rolls around, I'm hungry. Although I hadn't considered once I've had a really good lunch, so you're going to be putting all of your, I mean, we don't want to really talk about calories, but everything has calories. So you want all of your calories in one meal. I can see myself being able to do that at lunchtime and then just not eating for the rest of the day. I think I could actually do that rather than waiting until closer to the evening to have my one meal. The only time that becomes an issue is when you're trying to work around family and you're trying not to. It can be awkward to sit and sip on a cup of coffee while everybody else is eating a meal, but it's everybody finds what works best for them, right? So this one meal a day, all calories and sweeteners are in 1 hour. 23 hours is only salt, water, tea, or coffee. This is when you begin checking your blood numbers right before you eat. So at this point, I only check my numbers first thing in the morning. I get up, go to the washroom, weigh myself, and then I go take my numbers. And at the next step is where she wants me to start. So I still take my morning numbers, and then depending on when I'm putting in my eating window, I would go and I would check my numbers again. So to advance that one meal a day, you're going to move your eating hour within 11 hours following sunrise to match your circadian rhythm. You record the Dr. Boz ratio first thing in the morning, and then you repeat it before eating. So those are going to be my next steps. See how that's going to go. After that, and you can, any step along this continuum, as long as things are working and you're feeling fine and you're not too worried, stay there. You stay where you are until it's time, until you know that it's time to move on to the next step, right? Farther along, steps 9 to steps 12 are where it says here is about stressing your metabolism. And this is where you start implementing longer fasts. This is psychology, and you use this tribe for best results, okay? Number 9 is 36-hour fast. So basically you fast for 36 hours, no calories, no sweeteners. You start in the evening as to use 2 cycles of sleep during the 36 hours. You begin your fast after your evening meal, Danger: if you're on blood pressure meds or blood sugar lowering meds, talk to your doctor. You need to have your doctor on board with you when you're getting into those kinds of things. And if your doctor isn't the kind of doctor that is open to this, then maybe you need to find a new doctor. I think Dr. Ken Berry was saying the other day that there's even a chart that you can, or I don't know if it's an app or where you would go to find this, but where you would plunk your city into it and it'll tell you what is the closest doctor to your area that actually supports the ketogenic diet. And I think a person might be surprised at how many more there are out there than we really know. And maybe even your doctor, but your doctor doesn't know. Bring on the Keto Continuum book. Yeah. Ask him to read that. Anyway, step number 10 is a 36-hour fast without a celebration meal. So after 36 hours of fasting, return to your normal pattern of eating without a splurge meal. So that means just a normal meal. But offer a group fasting routine to others in your tribe and fast together. Makes it easier, makes it more sustainable, and you have others to bounce things off of and help keep you accountable. Step number 11 moves it up to a 48-hour fast. That's fasting for 48 hours, no calories, no sweeteners. This is safe to try twice a week. Unlike the 34-hour fast, this option keeps meals at the same time each day. Then step number 12 is a 72-hour fast. And now remember, this is the area that she moved into with her mom, who was fighting cancer, right? So 72 hours. When the timing is right, stress your metabolism with 8 weeks of one 72-hour fast a week. You do that for 8 weeks. The rest of the week, return to your baseline metabolism, whether that be 1 meal a day or an advanced 16-8, and then you just take it from there. So that is the basics of what I do. I know that I'm getting to the point now where I need to switch up to 1 meal a day. I'm just not, I'll know when the moment is right, is basically how it works, right? So basically, to cap off the question, can the fat on your plate burn the fat on your behind? I guess it can. Look at my pictures, because basically that is all fat. I can, everybody eats differently. Everybody likes different foods. A friend of mine is doing this with me right now, and she loves to have a good piece of steak. She eats differently than me, but she does love her seafood. I love sardines, and I'm happy to eat them. I eat at least a can of sardines a day. Not everybody's gonna feel that way. I think everybody should give them a chance because they're actually quite good. And then suppers for me are salmon. Like I said earlier, I'm a chicken and fish kind of person. I eat chicken breast because I prefer chicken breast. I have a hard time eating the rest of the chicken, so I have found ways to make it fattier so that it's perfect for me. And if the foods that I like are the ones that I'm going to be able to continue eating and be happy, right? So you have to find a way to incorporate the foods that you like in a way that works ketogenically for you, and that's what I'm here for. Please don't hesitate to shoot me any questions. I'd love to help out. In fact, I'm working on setting up coaching right now, so that I can whether that be like a one-on-one or in a group setting, where we would probably do it through Zoom. I would love to be able to take people through a period, a season of ketogenic, just to help you find out how to implement the foods, how to make the foods that you like, the foods that your body will like as well, in a good way, not in a fat building way. Anyway, so yeah, if you're getting any use from my videos, please subscribe, help me out here. Hit the like button, hit the bell icon so that you'll be notified the next time I drop a video. Share it with your friends, and hopefully I can help you. Hopefully I can help anyone. I would just love to be able to help. And I've also, the one thing that Dr. Boz really encourages is start a group. That's what I'm planning to do. I'm working on that right now, where I'm gonna have a group where anybody can come, and they can ask questions, and we can talk about what you can do to get started, or if you're already started, what might you need to have more success, have better success, whatever. Even if it's just getting together with like-minded people so that you don't feel so alone, right? In a world, if you can be anything, please be kind. And we will see you along the way.